HMRC is more aggressive than they've ever been, faster to chase, quicker to escalate and harder to negotiate with. This isn't paranoia. There are very specific reasons HMRC has changed, and the directors who don't understand those reasons are still making moves that might have worked 5 years ago, but they don't work today. I'm going to take you through the actual forces that's driving this change in behaviour, why the rules of engagement have shifted, and most importantly, what it means for you and your business and how you handle them from here. Now, the first thing to understand is this. HMRC just haven't woke up on the wrong side of the bed and decided to get tougher with directors. They've been told to. HMRC tracks something every year. It's called the tax gap. Plain English is the difference between what HMRC believes should have been paid in tax and what they've actually got collected. And it's huge. It's like tens of billions of pounds. And for years now, different governments have made closing that tax gap a clear political priority. So basically, HMRC have been given more staff, they've got better technology, they've got stronger powers, and it's got one very clear mandate: collect more of what they believe is owed to the government. So if you feel HMRC has changed lately, this is the big reason why. They're not being aggressive because someone's in a bad mood. They're doing the job that they've been instructed to do. Now, here's the bit that catches most directors out. They think this tax gap is like the big multinationals, your Starbucks, your Apples, your Facebook, but in reality, the biggest chunk of it sits with small and medium UK businesses. So when HMRC focuses its resources, it goes where it believes that recoveries are likely to be. And that's actually meaning businesses like yours at the moment. Now, I had a director come to me recently, genuinely shocked the level of attention his company was getting. A modest business, mid-six-figure turnover, and they've fallen behind on 3 VAT quarters. And he felt singled out. But he wasn't singled out. He's put himself on the radar of a strategy that puts businesses exactly like his at the centre of it. Now, the takeaway on this point is pretty simple. HMRC's behaviour usually isn't personal. It's policy. And once you understand that they've been told to collect more and that small and medium-sized businesses like you are the places that they're being told to look, the pressure that you're getting kind of makes a lot more sense. I mean, there's another reason it feels so different. On the ground, it's not just HMRC's more motivated, they're better informed. In simple terms, they can see far more of what's going on in your business than they could, say, 5 years ago. And when a creditor can see things, they chase faster and with more confidence. Now, let's go back to 2020, 2021. HMRC largely knew what you told them. If something didn't show up on a return or if it wasn't in your accounts, it often wasn't on the radar, at least not straight away. That's changed completely. That there is a system called Connect that HMRC runs, and it's a huge data matching tool that pulls information from all these different sources and it cross-references against what you've declared. And it's things like, it can look at bank and finance data, companies' house filings, land registry information, DVLA information, even information from overseas tax authorities. And in the last couple of years, one extra source has made a big difference to how they look at businesses and its digital platforms. So you've got like eBay, Etsy, blooming short-term lets, Airbnb, Booking.com, gig economy apps. They're all increasingly required to report income information directly to HMRC. So if money's coming into one of your businesses through these platforms and you've not declared it properly, the data is still going to land on HMRC's system, whether you've mentioned it or not. And once all of that data gets cross-referenced, HMRC can spot gaps and inconsistencies, and they do it much faster than they used to. And this is what's sitting behind a wave of what we call nudge letters. Like many directors are getting these letters that basically say, we think something doesn't match. Do you want to correct it before we take it further? Now, when HMRC could mostly only see what you told them, there was lots more back and forth, lots of negotiation, loads of time kicking it into the long grass. But now with this data backing them up, HMRC don't feel that they need to negotiate in the same way. They can be firmer because they believe that they're working from facts, not in the past where it's guesswork. Now the lessons, this HMRC pressure isn't only about wanting more money, it's also about having the information to pursue businesses like you with confidence. So the old approach of sort of keeping your head down and hoping they move on, it doesn't work. That the safest place to be is inside the data picture. Declare everything, file on time. And if you do get a nudge letter, deal with a mismatch early. What you don't want is a formal inquiry or further enforcement action. So far we've talked about forces that are all pushing the same way, you know, the mandate to close the tax gap. There's more pressure on public finances and the data. HMRC can basically see far more than they used to. But there's another bit of information that explains why some directors feel HMRC isn't just chasing the company. They're watching the person behind it now. Now, there's a thing called the Phoenixism Task Force. HMRC and the Insolvency Service set up this task force with a very specific aim. It's to catch directors who use insolvency processes to leave behind tax debt, then start again in a new company doing the same thing. And they call it abusive Phoenixism. And in the last few years, they put real resources into it, and there's some real power behind those resources. Now, the key tool that they're using is something called a Joint and Several Liability Notice, or a JLN for short, and it was introduced in 2020. Now, in certain situations, particularly where there's a pattern of repeated insolvencies, HMRC can use these joint and several liability notices to make directors personally liable for unpaid tax. And crucially, that liability will survive any type of business insolvency. Now, the pattern that they're looking for is fairly obvious, you know. Business owners who purposefully build up their HMRC debts, VAT, PAYE, over multiple periods. The director is continuing to trade the business when it's clear the tax is never going to get paid. Then the company goes into an insolvency process. New company appears doing the exact same thing, same customers, same staff. Now, the old tax debt is meant to be left in the insolvent company, and new company carries on. And that's the pattern that they're there to spot. And why this actually matters for sort of the video, which is HMRC aggression, it should tell you what HMRC are thinking. They're not just treating an insolvent company as a closed book anymore. They're looking at the directors who over multiple years, over multiple businesses, are shutting down companies with HMRC arrears. And then they're just setting up again in a different name. If you do that now, you are going to attract a very different level of scrutiny. Now, I've covered this detail elsewhere on other videos, so I'm not going to overdo it. But you need to know that this task force exists because it changes the long-term cost of getting HMRC wrong in your business today. Now, put simply, if you are a repeat offender, HMRC debt doesn't always die as cleanly as you assume or have been told in the past. Now, the lesson is the pressure from HMRC, it's not just about what's on their screen this month. It's patterns that they're looking for, that they're seeing over years. So if you ever consider closing a company and starting again, you've got to do it properly. You've got to get the right advice, make sure valuations are done where needed, and ensure that it's transparent and there are safeguards around what you're doing. And that way, you stay on the legitimate side of the line. But if you get it wrong, the pressure isn't necessarily going to die with an insolvency. It can follow you into your next company. So yeah, listen, they're the reasons HMRC's changed. Now let me tell you what to actually do about it. Now, if you've followed everything I've said so far, you might be thinking, right, I am getting it from HMRC from every angle, and you're probably going to feel overwhelmed. Now, the response isn't to panic. It's definitely not to hide. It's to start dealing with HMRC the way they want to be dealt with now. And like in practice, it's fairly simple. Like move early and not late. The earlier you engage with HMRC, the more options you'll definitely have. File every return on time, even if you can't pay it. Non-filing turns a cash flow problem into a compliance problem. Now, if you're speaking to HMRC and you need some time to pay, turn up with numbers. Know what you owe them, know what you can pay and when you can pay them, and make realistic proposals that your company can actually stick to, and be straight with them. Listen, half-truths, sort of fannying them, kicking them into the long grass, it doesn't land well anymore. And most importantly, get proper advice early from people who deal with HMRC day in, day out. Because this version of HMRC is very different in the past. And directors who are going to get in a mess this year are the ones still trying to play it the old way, ducking, diving, avoiding, delaying, hoping it blows over. You've got to update your approach. And if you do that, you're going to give your business a real chance. And the takeaway is HMRC has changed. The pressure you're feeling isn't in your head, and it's not going away either. But the answer to a tougher HMRC isn't fear. It's you've got to be sharper, better prepared. You know, act fast if there's a problem. Get advice early. And just stay on top of the basics. If you do it that way, you can still come through it. Do it the old way, and it's going to get ugly quickly. Anyway, I hope you found this video useful. If you're struggling with HMRC and you've got arrears with HMRC, there's a thing called a time to pay arrangement, and most directors get it wrong. Go and watch that video over there. It'll explain everything you need to know about how to set up a time to pay arrangement with HMRC. Thanks for your time.